There's only 24 hours in a day. I got a pair of earbuds and I wish there was a way that I could know just what I want to listen to. There's 150,000 shows that I'm not sitting through. When the world is dark and boring, let us do your exploring. Pod on pod. Pod on pod.
Welcome to Pod on Pod, a guide to the world of podcasts because it's not your daddy's radio. We're your hosts.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Joel. Welcome back, folks. Welcome back, poppers.
Yeah.
That's right. If you like this show, then you are a member of the POP Army. So are you down with POP?
Yeah, you know me.
That's exactly. Hey, do us a favor, by the way. Stop by our iTunes or Stitcher spots. Visit us on iTunes or Stitcher and rate us, review us. We'd love to give us a 5-star rating, but you don't have to. You rate us how you want to. But any way that you do it helps other people find our show. So we appreciate you doing that. Podonpod.com. If you don't want to find the links, there's links there that'll take you directly to those places. But we appreciate you coming back for another week. This week on Pod on Pod, we're going to be discussing
Modern Day Philosophers.
with Danny Lobell.
Yeah.
I've never heard of this show before you suggested it.
You didn't even know who Danny Lobell was, did you?
Never heard of the man. I know him quite a bit now, though.
I've seen him on a couple of things, only television-wise, never listened to him in anything. Gotta be honest with you, didn't really like him on the telly.
I think that's interesting. I like the dude, especially now that I've listened to several episodes of his podcast. The podcast, by the way, is called Modern Day Philosophers, Comedians Talking Philosophy with Danny Lobell. You can find more at moderndayphilosophers.net. This show was launched in 2013, August of 2013, but Danny's been a podcaster a lot longer than that. I looked him up. 2004, he started a show called Comical Radio. It was really one of the first comedy podcasts.
Yeah.
And he interviewed other stand-up comics. He was based in New York at the time, and he had access. He was there. A lot of people were there. He knew people that knew people, and he used that network to interview a ton of big names. Jerry Seinfeld's been in his chair. Chris Rock has been in his chair at different times. So some of even the more internationally known comedians he's talked to, more than 1,000 comics were interviewed on that show. What happened, though, is that Danny's career never really took off, mainstream anyway.
Right.
Lots of other people came to podcasting in the meantime, lots of other better-known comics who then had access to even more interviews than he did.
You know, I don't think it was so much that more well-known comics got into that. I think there were comics that came in that did it better.
That might have been it too, but
Like
by the time...
Mark Maron.
Absolutely.
We've talked about WTF. He started that because his career had kaputted.
Yes, very much so. And if you listen to Danny's show, I think you'll find a lot of similarities between the way that he conducts his interviews and the way that Mark does, the way that, not just Mark, Mark's probably the best known guy that does this thing, interviews a lot of comics. But what Danny found was that other shows were doing it better or doing it in a splashier way. He just felt like his show had run its course.
Right, but he doesn't necessarily stop doing it. He just adds a twist.
Absolutely. In 2012, he shut down Comical Radio and opened this show, Modern Day Philosophers. About that same time, he moved to L.A. He and his girlfriend kind of started over out there. And since then, this show has kind of taken off in its own right. He's got a ton of great interviews, and it's a really interesting twist. He talks to comedians, but not about their life necessarily, not about their comedy and their writing styles or their work. He talks about philosophy and the big ideas in life. Every episode, he pairs a comedian up with a specific philosopher.
Yeah.
They talk about the general ideas behind his philosophy. They talk about that comedian's general life philosophy and how it might mesh.
And there's always a connection.
Yes, generally. I think always there's a reason they've chose that philosopher to go with that comedian. And then at the end, and I like this, they close by sharing a few quotes from that specific philosopher. Cool idea. It's a really cool idea. And I think Danny's onto something by pivoting his show a little bit, making it different enough from the other things that are out there. And I think there's definitely a niche that he can find. And I'm sure he's already found some of that niche as he's got ads on the show. So there must be some support. He also takes donations on his website if you enjoy the show. And this is really his day job, as a lot of other comics now are finding. Like, this is what I'm doing all the time. And sometimes I'm finding stand-up shows.
Right.
So what we do here on Pod is every week we discuss a different podcast. We break it down with 4 criteria. We talk about audio quality, host likability, production values, and then the content itself. We also give the show some alternate names, maybe, that might be more descriptive, and then we talked about our favorite moments, and finally, we rate the show, giving it either a 1 or 2 earbuds. That's the way we rate it, not thumbs up, not stars. We give it earbuds. We'll do that at the end of the show. Right now, let's talk a little bit more about the show, break it down in all these different areas. First off, you said you don't like Danny. Your general thoughts about the podcast? You like it better than Danny?
All right. So I've seen him on a couple of different television venues. I didn't really care for him. Just kind of rubbed me the wrong way, right?
Right.
Very first episode I listened to of Modern Day Philosophy, and at first I didn't correlate the two, right? So the very first episode of Modern Day Philosophy that I listened to was the Aisha
Tyler
episode.
Which, of course, we've reviewed her show in the past, Girl on Guy.
Right. And one of the things that I like to do is I like to make this incestuous spider web of podcasting where if there's someone we reviewed and they're on someone's show, I almost always try to listen to that episode.
I do think it's one of the neatest things about podcasting that there is a lot of crossover.
Yeah.
If somebody does your show, the general consensus is that you're going to go and do their show at some point whenever scheduling allows. And that doesn't really matter how big you are. If you have somebody on as a guest and they're a peon, you still got to go back and do their show. It's kind of not kosher if you don't. And what it does is it allows you to see a totally different side of those personalities. Aisha Tyler is a very different person on Girl on Guy.
And so, because she has to run the show.
Yes, than she is when she's the subject of a podcast. So that's an interesting take. Aisha Tyler and Roger Scruton was the philosopher for that episode. The 3 episodes that I listened to were Lewis Black, and they discussed the philosopher William James, Carl Reiner, and they discussed the Jewish philosopher Moses Maimonides. I'm sure I said that wrong.
That's pretty close.
It's pretty close. And then one of the very first episodes of this podcast I went back and listened to, episode 2, was Rick Overton, the comedian, and Plato, the philosopher.
Right on.
And really what I was looking to do, other than the Carl Reiner episode, I was looking for philosophers I knew, not comedians I knew. The Lewis Black was sort of a coincidence.
See, I did the exact opposite. I looked at guests that I'd already known and enjoyed. So I listened to Aisha. I listened to Mark Maron, whose philosopher was begins with an S. Spinoza. There we go. Thank you. And then I listened to Reggie Watch, whose philosopher was John Cage, who I don't think is necessarily a philosopher, but he was definitely an innovator, a out-of-the-box thinker when it came to music.
Well, William James is really known, I think, more as a psychiatrist and a psychologist than a philosopher, but because of the nature of the time and if you were a big thinker, if you were someone who was pushing any school of thought, probably you were technically a philosopher at some point. And that's one of the interesting twists here is that in the modern age, there really aren't any philosophers as far as like something that they do as a life job or like their life's work, or there are very few and far between and we don't know them. A lot of people have said that stand-up comics in some ways, or at least some of them, are sort
modern
of our
day
version.
philosophers.
Exactly, they're modern day philosophers. Mel Brooks has made that joke in History of the World Part 1, you know. Now, he also called them bullshit artists, which I'm going to bleep there. But I think there's something to that, too. So let's get right to it. Let's talk about audio quality first. What did you think about the recordings and the actual transmission of this show?
This show does what a lot of other shows do is he'll record an intro and an outro separately from the interview, so the transition and audio quality per episode will switch from that intro to the actual interview. I didn't have any problems at all listening to the actual interview portions. I thought they all went well. But sometimes, like, he'll record the intro in his kitchen, and there's some ambient noise there. But solid.
The other problem that you had with the intros goes more to host likability. We'll talk about that in a moment. I thought this was a very well recorded show, especially because some of them are recorded on the go. For instance, he went to Carl Reiner's house and set up with a portable recording setup.
He went to Mark Maron's house and actually sat in Mark Maron's chair, and Mark sat on the other side of the table.
Oh, nice. But it was nice and consistent. It was always very listenable. None of the episodes I heard had any audio issues. It wasn't perfect. This isn't the gold standard, but there's nothing wrong with it. I'm going to be very careful not to apply that label anymore. So let's move straight to host likability then. To me, Danny comes off as interested, as invested, And he often comes off genuinely grateful to meet some of these people.
And enthusiastic.
Yeah, absolutely. He likes comedy. He likes to learn. He likes talking to people. He likes talking, period. And all of those things are things that you want in a podcaster. There is nothing worse than hearing someone without joy for the work. Like, you're doing this mostly for free, dude. I'm downloading it for free. I'm probably, the vast majority of people who listen to this are never going to give you money, and the vast majority of people will never even hear this or know that it exists. So if you don't enjoy what you're doing, get the hell out of podcasting.
Agree wholeheartedly. Here, so for host likability with me,
Yes.
I've already said it, didn't like him on television. The very first episode I listened to had like a 10-minute intro that at times reminded me a lot of Bob Ball, which we know my thoughts there. And I almost didn't even make it to the interview. Again, on this show, we are going to give every episode 3 episodes.
Sure.
And I'm so glad I did because much like when we reviewed the Joe Rogan Experience, the more I listened, the more I grew to like him. So by the end of it, I think the last episode I listened to was Reggie Watts. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I liked him. I like all the things that you mentioned already. His enthusiasm, his passion, his love for what he's doing is what really captured me and brought me back to his side. I will probably try to stay away from him on television, though.
I think Danny is a really easy guy for the audience to align themselves with. The way that he questions, the way that he respects his guests' opinions, even when they differ vastly from his, he's asking, hoping to learn, not asking as in, how could you believe that, or why, or aren't you stupid, or why don't you believe the thing that I believe? And I think for someone who's going to do a show about these big ideas, about philosophical and theological concerns and questions, I think that's the only way to approach it. So I really like Danny. I don't know that I'm going to enjoy his stand-up comedy. As a matter of fact, I like him so much through this show, I'm not sure that I want to hear his stand-up comedy. What does that say about me? Maybe I won't like it, and then I'll go back to not liking him, perhaps. Let's move on, though, to production values. I said, as I'm listening to the first episode, theme song in, theme song out, Josh is going to love this show. That's not the normal way of the show. As you said, he records an intro and an outro that plays around the theme song. And what do you think of the theme song first? It's a silly little old-timey radio-sounding theme song, sort of.
Yeah, I think it fits the show.
I think so, too. It's a little zany, but it lays out the premise of the show very simply.
He's a little zany.
A little bit.
And outside of the show, I think he's pretty zany.
And again, maybe that I would know more about that if I'd seen his comedy before. I think the intro and the outro are awesome. I think at times his intro, his personal intro and discussion of the interview that's coming is too long. It's the same problem that I have with Mark Maron. I understand why they do it. If for no other reason, they need a place to put ads. And that is a convenient place to do your personal advertisements. Your hey, let me tell you how much I love this service that's paying me to tell you how much I love them. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm a guy that works in radio. I understand that ads pay the bills. And as a matter of fact, if you're
so we did Tell Him Steve Dave
Yes.
last episode. They don't all they'll do live reads in the middle of their show that actually becomes a bit.
We've mentioned several times, we haven't reviewed them yet, but My Brother and Me, they put it all in one section in the middle, but they always turn the ads into a bit.
Right.
And that does make it much more palatable.
Yes.
I'm imagining, though, lots of sponsors don't like that.
Well, those sponsors are stupid.
I tend to agree with you. I do. I wonder how much control obviously he has all the control, but I wonder how much he picks and chooses his sponsors, or if it is literally whoever will bring him money gets on the show. I think with Mark Maron, at least, the amounts of money are so large, he's getting real corporate sponsors, which means that there's very little leeway in the way that he conducts the advertisement, I imagine. But at the same time, he doesn't do business, I would imagine, with companies that he doesn't care for.
And TSD are guys who are doing the show because they love doing the show and could care less whether they're getting sponsorship dollars or not.
Right. And a lot of their sponsorship is fairly local, too. They do a lot of hey, this is a New Jersey business, this is a New York business, this is a Connecticut business or whatever. I've heard a lot of I say a lot of. I've heard several. I heard several local spots in their show. Quote unquote local compared to their international reach with a podcast.
The only reason I know, and I know Warby Parker has the Eyeglass company has been on several different shows. The only reason I remember them is because of Tell 'em Steve Dave.
Nice. Yeah, they advertise on a lot of people. Like Squarespace advertises on everybody's show. So the one thing I would say about the production values is he could trim the intros and the outros. Expose yourself and the things going on in your life through the interviews. You don't have to tell. Show, not tell, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I think we would both like it a little better.
Well, I'll disagree a little here. If you keep your intro to just talking about your life or what's going on, I tend to like that. It gives me some perspective on where you're coming from when you're asking questions in your interviews.
Okay.
But keep them focused, man.
All right, and that brings us to the content itself. Is the occasional bad intro, is the little bit of grandstanding with the fake sound effects, etc., is that too much? Does it override the solid thoughts and the deep thinking from these humorous people that he interviews?
I was a little conflicted listening to it because often it's hard not to compare his interview style to other interview styles that we've listened to.
Yes, there is a lot of similarity.
And it's not fair to do that. I don't think it's fair to do that.
Sure, because he's not these other guys, these other people.
Right. So it was a little distracting. I got to remember, I have to understand and accept his style of interview. Otherwise, I'll get out of my head.
Okay.
Right? Like I won't be able to follow.
You're not involved in the conversation.
Right, because I'll start thinking, oh, well, why didn't he do it like this? And then I miss
content.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it's not fair to judge him on, oh, well, I missed that because of his style. No, I missed that because I was thinking of comparing him to someone else.
Sure. But at the same time, I don't think it's completely invalid because all of the listeners to this show are likely to be facing some of those same similarities and comparisons.
Sure, that's it's fair enough for you to say. Very few people, I believe, are listening to the amount of podcasts that we're listening to.
I don't know that anybody's listening to the amount of podcasts you and I are listening to.
So for the average listener, that's not going to be a problem.
Yeah,
is what I'm saying. For the average listener, my own crazy thoughts. Because we listen to so many of these, it's not going to be their problem. So I think it's fine.
You're probably right. I loved the idea of the show, as I said early on. I like philosophy. I was in the last philosophy class at our university here that was ever taught, I guess. I know they haven't started it again. Who knows if they might in the future. We can hope. But there hasn't been a philosophy class since that one. That was my freshman year of college. I loved it. I've read a lot of books on philosophy. I actually read Plato, like really read his works as well.
That's one of the reasons why I pitched you this.
I'm glad you did. This is going to be a show that I continue to subscribe to. I think the content is well worth it. Even if you come in on a weird episode and you don't like Danny right away, or if you've seen his comedy before and you're like, I don't think that guy's that funny. This isn't a funny podcast. There are funny moments, there are humorous moments, as there are in all the shows that we've listened to. But this show is about discussing, why are we here? What is it all for? Where did it come from? Where are we going?
What I really enjoy is it's do these concepts from these philosophers hold up? And the great thing is there's generally a connection between the philosopher and the guests. So for Reggie Watts, for example, there's some crazy out there stuff that John Cage was doing, right? Like he wrote this one piece, I want to say it was called 430 or 433, and literally it's a musician up there with their instrument, and for 4 minutes and 30 seconds, they don't play a single thing. They don't do anything.
It's just silence?
There's no such thing as silence, man. It's the reaction from the crowd, the hum from maybe an amp, somebody coughing, the ambient noise.
Tinkling glasses.
That's what the music is.
That's interesting.
That's what the piece is. So there's no such thing as silence. And being able to see Reggie Watts, who is very musical. I mean, it's what the dude does.
Yes.
Right?
He's a musical comic. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that's a simplification of what he does,
yes.
But that's what he does.
Right. For him to be like, well, is that bogus, or is this guy literally finding the least amount of work he can possibly do to make
Right.
to make money.
Hey, I'm gonna get you to pay me to stand here for 4 minutes.
Right. And so is that a valid thing? Like, is that music, or is that something bogus? Is there silence? Isn't there silence? So it's really cool to be able to see these modern guys that we've seen or that we've listened to, and have them be able to agree or disagree, or maybe go in a different path than those older philosophers.
I think that's, I'll agree with that. If you find any of these questions, discussions, ideas interesting, then I think you're going to find this podcast interesting too. Again, you can find more at moderndayphilosophers.net. Before we rate the show, we like to give it alternate names. I'm going to step right up off the top, use one that I referenced earlier in the show. I'm going to call this show Bullshit Artists and the Art of Bullshit.
I'm going to call it Old People Crazy.
How about Deep Thoughts from the Cheap Seats?
Oh, that is
Isn't that a good
that's
one?
a good one.
That's a good title for a show anyway. I was really proud of that one too.
That's a really good one.
Deep Thoughts from the Cheap Seats. I kind of like that one. That's where we're going to stick.
We should
start a show.
We should start it, and what it is we go to like community theater plays, man, and then just
bring back the nugget of philosophy to discuss.
Not just philosophy, man, but just what we think about it.
My favorite moments from the show, Lewis Black was discussing his belief in mediums. One medium in particular, and I forget the man's name, but there's a medium that he knows, and he believes 100% that this person can see the future. He says that this guy talks to dead people. That's what he says happens. Lewis says, I don't presume to know how he gets the information that he has, but he knew things about me and knows things about me that there's no other way that he could know it. It's a supernatural thing that he has, or at least a thing beyond the current understandings of science.
Man, that's it. I would have not thought Lewis Black.
Me neither.
Would have thought
he had a moment, and this is also in that same episode. Lewis Black had some time after his brother passed away. I think it was cancer that took him. His brother passed away. He says he's felt his presence several times. Weird thing, doors that had never been unlocked or opened. Like lots of things happened. Strange occurrences afterwards. He believes 100% that his brother exists even now as some sort of presence and somewhere, and that at the time he had a low level of communion with that. He never heard his brother speak, but he said, just like, if you're in a room with 5 or 6 people and you are aware of their presence, like you're talking to one person, but you're aware that the other people are there. I was aware my brother was there. He didn't talk to me. He didn't tell me go do this or do that, but I felt him. There he was.
Reggie Watts, of the 3 that I listened to, Reggie Watts was probably my favorite because, number one, I knew the least about him.
Yes.
Right? I knew he's done Comedy Bang Bang. I know he's been on the show. But he was the one I knew the least about. And I'd literally just watched him do a bit on The Meltdown.
Okay.
It's interesting that he doesn't rehearse. He doesn't write any of the stuff that he does. He doesn't rehearse any of the stuff that he does. That what you see him do on stage will probably be the first and last time that is ever done.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, like it's
true improvisation.
Yeah, and it's crazy. And he even say he gets bit parts on movies or television, they call him like, hey, can you come in and audition? He's like, no. You know what I do. Like,
I could do
I'm
that.
not an actor. I'm not an actor. I do a very specific thing. And if that's the thing that director wants, then book me. I'm not putting it on tape. I'm not coming in to audition. And he's like, and the funny thing is that has actually worked. Like, I've said that and have gotten jobs. Now, he's had to do things in movies to where he has had to write. Right? Like, he's not opposed to writing or composing, right? Because he's had to do it. Like, for some theater shows he does it for. But generally, like, anytime you see him on stage doing his thing,
that's
never been done before.
It's a once-in-a-lifetime performance.
That's amazing.
That is really cool. That's fascinating, as a matter of fact. The one other moment that I absolutely love from this show actually came in an intro before the interview. In the Carl Reiner episode, Danny is discussing how excited he was to meet Carl Reiner, how he even got a moment with Carl. Carl invited him back to the house like the next day to hang out with he and Mel Brooks, and that was like a highlight of his life. He hasn't told that story yet. He just mentioned it in passing and said, someday I'm going to tell you about it. But the one thing that he did say specifically that kind of touched me, Carl Reiner's wife, and her name escapes me now, but she's passed away about 6 years ago or so, and Carl was talking about his wife and gave him CDs that she had recorded. She was a singer. She didn't start singing, though, until after her 60th birthday.
Oh, wow.
And she was a professional singer for 30 years until just before her death. And he was talking about how much that inspired him. Here he is, he's 31 years old, and at times he feels like he's the old man whose life hasn't gone like he planned, and he's not as successful as he wants to be, et cetera, et cetera. But he's a young man. There's a whole life ahead of him, and no matter how old you are, like, if you want to be a thing, then go and be that thing. And nobody's stopping you but you.
You know what? It didn't surprise me at all when you said that Carl Reiner would invite him over to hang out, because he looks like, I don't want this to be a compliment or an insult. It's just
what it is.
An observation.
Okay.
A young Dom DeLuise.
He does look a little like a young Dom DeLuise.
Yeah. And some of the zaniness, like, it doesn't surprise me that he got invited over to hang out.
That's interesting. It was obvious that Carl enjoyed him. He enjoyed he enjoyed the interview. He said that he had seen some of his work. He thought he was a funny comic. And I thought one of the most endearing moments of that show was at the end. Carl goes into a spiel with him about how he needs to lose weight. He's telling him, he's like, "You're taking years off your life, son. Yeah. You get smaller portions, and give up the chops and the steaks. Just chicken and fish, small portions. Come, I'll show you." And I'm like, "Oh, that's awesome." Then Carl taking a moment to help out this kid. That brings us to our overall rating. Josh, what did you think of this show?
I was pleasantly surprised.
And it grows on you like a fungus.
Yeah, especially with the first intro that I heard, driving me crazy, powering through it, like, no, this is the show, this is the assignment, this is the job, I'm gonna get it done. I enjoy it. I'm not gonna listen to every episode just because there's going to be people in there I don't find interesting who I've heard other places, and I'm not going to waste my time recovering that ground.
Sure.
But for the people I like, or the people that I'm interested in, or if a philosopher pops up and I'm like, oh yeah, let me listen about that, I'm gonna continue tuning in.
I'm excited. I've found a new show to subscribe to. I mean, this is one that and again, maybe I don't listen to every single episode, but I will get every new episode and start it or give it a chance maybe. And I think the ones that I skip will be few and far between. He's got an interesting take. It's a great idea. And the comedians are interesting when given the chance to talk about something more than comedy and the broader ideas in life. Overall, I'm going to give it 2 earbuds.
All right. I'm very happy that you gave it that. A little surprised. I'm going to surprise you with a 1.5 earbud rating.
That was kind of what I thought you were going to end up on, actually. Yeah, no, I'm not surprised by that at all. It's a better than you think show.
Yeah, it is.
It really is. So give it a chance, too. ModernDayPhilosophers.net. That's where you can find more. And, of course, you can find all of our ratings and all of our reviews at podonpod.com. Do us a favor. Stop by the website. Click on this episode and tell us what you thought of our review. Tell us what you thought of the show. And tell us whether you're going to be listening to Modern Day Philosophers from now on. Next week, the show we're going to be reviewing, Mommy's Cocktail Hour.
That's going to be exciting.
The ladies are back in charge. It's a sort of a parenting podcast. It's a comedic podcast hosted by 2 lovely ladies, although they do have occasional guest episodes with their husbands, too.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Because we have been knocked on this. Do you think we give a fair representation of female hosted podcasts? Or do you think there's just less of them for us to work through?
There are less of them. I think we could do a better job of balancing. And just because there are less overall female-led podcasts than male-led podcasts doesn't mean that there are less good female-led podcasts than good male-led podcasts. Because we both agree there's a tremendous amount of junk out there.
Oh, yeah.
So I do think here's what we endeavor to do. We endeavor to not go too many episodes without having a female hosted or at least a female co-host of a show that we review. And if you've got episodes or podcasts that you would like us to review, things that you think are great examples of women doing it right or minorities doing it right, we'd love to hear those too. So send them. Find all of our contact info at podonpod.com and come back next week for a new review of another great podcast. Until next week,
I'm Josh.
And I'm Joel. And this has been
Projection or the history of art. Do you want to learn a language?
Pod on Pod is a proud member of the Procast Network, a Procreate production. Procreate is a community of artists in film, music, the digital arts, and fine arts that helps connect and collaborate on projects. You can find out more at www.teamprocreate.com. Also, be sure to check out the Non-Content podcast if you're a fan of gaming and or anime. The Pod on Pod theme song is written and performed by Adam Dale. Find his music in iTunes and more information about him on our website.
Our musical guest this week is Matt Cubas.
Have been walking through my head like they made it right, but my soul hit a wall and I don't wanna wait another lifetime. It's your storyline I don't wanna follow. I'm just trying to write mine, I'm not worried. And I could make a name or live it in the moment, but I promise either way there's no hurry. Maybe today I'm wide awake, and along the way I'll try to stay wide awake, has been lifted. Maybe love will lead a better life if I take what I'm giving.